Good evening and welcome to Science is Your World. My name is Andrew Hebda. I'll be your host this evening. We have a special guest tonight. Our guest is Mr. Gilbert van Ricke-Voorsel. He's an environmental photographer. He's a man of many, many talents. He's the vice president of the Nova Scotia Photographic Guild, and he's been on the program before. He's come up with a really amazing program today. It has to do with visitors, but in this case we're not talking about things such as in-laws coming unexpectedly, but we are talking about perhaps a little bit of unexpected visitors in aquatic habitats. Perhaps, Gilbert, you could take us for this tour of our visitors.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. I realized that as a diver, as a sports diver, and as an underwater photographer, I'm talking to a lot of people that in Nova Scotia that are divers, but also to a great number of people that have never seen what you can see underwater in our waters. And I think it's spectacular. And St. Margaret's Bay, it's one of my favorite locations. And this is where things are going to happen that you will see in the show.
That sounds good. Just before we get to the interesting photographs, you're an environmental photographer. Now, how does this apply to diving? You could maybe explain that.
Well, the environment is sort of encompasses the skies and the lands and the waters. And the waters would be a very specialized field, and that's where my specialty is. I do underwater photography, and I feature the quality of fresh water by the life that it supports. And so I dive in the rivers and in the shallow coastal waters of the Atlantic provinces.
This is natural history at its best, then.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, if we could perhaps look at some of the footage we have here, and welcome to our tour of St. Margaret's Bay.
Yes, here we come to Paddy's Head, which is close to Indian Harbor or Peggy's Cove at the mouth of St. Margaret's Bay. Last summer we had a splendid summer, very beautiful weather, very little disturbance of the waters, so the waters were extremely clear, and this is what you see off Paddy's Head. It's a very popular diving location, and you have big boulders that are covered with seaweeds, kelp, and weeds of all kinds. And then, of course, the life that lives in this kind of a habitat. And you have the fish that are living in the water column, which are usually the pelagic species. And then you have the fish that lives around reefs and near the groundfish. And so you will see some examples of that. And last year we had a very interesting phenomenon, which is not entirely new to our region. It is actually the Gulf Stream, which sort of a warm current river which runs from the south into northern direction, and is usually some 100 or 200 kilometers offshore,
so well off,
but at times drifts in to the shore of the land, of the landmass, and then this warm water of the Gulf Stream, which is exceptionally warm, as we think about this survivor of that ship disaster recently, who lived for two days in that water, and it is nearly winter here. And then in June, when this was videographed, the waters are still very cold, but then the Gulf Stream had brought in this warm water, And with the warm water, the life comes. As the season warms up the water, all the migrating species come, and the planktonic species come first, and the fish will follow that because it's their food. And then you see these jellyfish, and they were right away very spectacular and unusual to see at that time of the year in St. Margaret's Bay. Here we have a jellyfish which has been nibbled at by fish, or has been most likely nibbled at by fish, because the pollock are going after little fish that live in amongst the tentacles of them.
They're not worried about the stinging cells?
No, they live in sort of a symbiotic situation where the tentacles, they know how to avoid them, or they are not affected by them. Mm-hmm. And this fish you see here is one that most of the divers that visit this location there know. It's a fairly sizable kelp perch. It's a blue fish. It would be interesting to know how old the fish is, because I have seen this fish for many, many years.
Well, it's individual. Everybody knows the specific individual.
That's right, yeah. It's an individual, and it's a fish that is not worried by so many divers that come there.
How large an individual is he?
Here he would be about a foot. Mm-hmm. Here you see him taking actually a piece of seaweed, which he feeds on, and he takes it somewhere, and he's very particular. He finds that particular strand that he likes, and he nibbles at a little bit, and then he spews it out again. And he was very curious. This is the interesting thing when you are doing photography. You want to get close to these creatures, and you have to find ways how to do that. And so you approach them very slowly, and you find out that they are all very interested. They're very curious. They're all very curious, and somehow you have to stir that curiosity with them, you know.
So you don't do fish impressions, but rather how do you attract the fish then? Or you just
well, you attract them by making, for example, with your nails, you can make click sounds. Uh-huh. And it's a sound that they communicate themselves with. Or you can, if you know what kind of food they are going for, you can pick it up somewhere and make it more readily available to them, which attracts them, of course.
Yes.
Many different ways. Just the constant exposure will eventually make the fish accept you as a non-threat.
Yes.
And so he will not be alarmed by your presence, and in this case I am only about 3 feet away of that fish, and then of course it's when you shoot for films, you want to get the normal behavior of that creature. Mm-hmm. In nature photography you have to be very careful to get that normal behavior that is as if you were not there.
Yes.
You know.
That's the challenge, is it?
Yeah. That takes more than half of the skill to do this, and then of course you have to see with a trained photographic eye to make compositions. Like here you see those 2 jellyfish, which gives a perspective in an environment where perspective is not that prominent.
So again, the light, it's that plus the technical aspect of angles and light and...
Yeah.
As well.
So, for example, the definition of what you see in the distance, even when the waters are clear, falls off very quickly, because there is always some sediment in the water, you know.
As demonstrated here, yes.
Yeah, and then you see. So you have to always find ways photographically to set off the contrast, you know.
Now he's not running away, is he? I assume, is he?
He is not pleased with my presence, but he is not too alarmed neither, because this is a lobster that I've known for over 10 years.
They're old friends you're showing us
An
here.
old friend, an old friend, yeah. I catch him, and then I let him walk around in his habitat, and then I just let him go and photograph it also with the habitat, because that all belongs to the storytelling of just a picture without having to say anything with it, you know.
Does he have a particular home, territory that he's...
Yeah. Well, this lobster is there for such a long time because there is just enough food for him to support himself. And there are blue mussels and lots of periwinkles and the crabs, and those are mostly what the lobster exists on. But it's a very fascinating animal because of all the species that we have, it's one of the oldest creatures that have never changed since, as I understand, since pre-dinosaur times. The lobster is like an insect that lived in those times, millions and millions of years ago, and has never changed. And the reason he is so adaptable to anything that is edible that comes as the season changes.
Yes.
You know.
So the word is plastic, I think, isn't that what they use now?
Yeah.
It has plasticity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now these are again. We just lost them.
These are these beautiful weeds that we have. Some of them look like filigrane, fine woven material that when you're close up to it, it becomes a little world in itself, because it also has little creatures that live in amongst it that then become visible. You know.
A little ecosystem by itself, then.
Yeah. Macro into. And then, of course, here we have this total surprise. This is the triggerfish. It could be the gray or the queen triggerfish. It's debatable. I have known the triggerfish in the Caribbean.
Yes.
And why is this fish in St. Margaret's Bay? Because of the Gulf Stream, which pushed into our shores, into St. Margaret's Bay, and a bell of warm water separated itself in St. Margaret's Bay, trapping a number of these species which are normally not known in our region.
This is something that in the middle of winter we fly down south to see, rather than...
Exactly, yeah. And that's interesting because I do that occasionally. Go to Cuba or the Dutch Antilles and dive in these spectacular reefs that you have there. And then the triggerfish is a very well known character that you see there, that you can also hand feed there. And so I thought I knew how to approach this fish from my experience in the Caribbean. They are particularly interested in sea urchins, and they nibble off the long spines of the black long-spined sea urchins. And somehow I believe the sea urchins there are softer scaled.
I see.
Because the ones that we have here are quite hard scaled.
Very blunt, yeah.
And they are not able to crush the scales of the ones that we have here.
Yeah,
so
they have a beak on them. You can, I assume that's the
a very powerful beak, because when you look at the when you look at the shape of the head, you know, the jaws that this fish has for his way of life. They are set. They are made for nibbling on coral, on stony things. They're really hard, and you can see this. You can see the teeth on that fish too, and you have to watch out that you don't get bitten by it neither. Because, but it's a very gentle fish, and so what I tried is I first tried sea urchins, which I got from Terence Bay, because they are not in St. Margaret's Bay at that time. Well, last year.
Not normally, or there's just it's.
No, we had a
dieback.
We had a die-off of sea urchins some years ago. They all disappeared, but they're coming back from the north and into St. Margaret's Bay. And so I thought sea urchins what I should feed them. So I brought some sea urchins there. But they weren't interested because that's typical, because fish will only eat what they know.
And
Something they don't know, they won't trust, and they won't touch it, you know. So I opened up those sea urchins, and no, no response, a little nibbling, but and then there are lots of crabs, and particularly the green crabs that we have, they are fairly soft-scaled. And then I broke one of those crabs open, and immediately they went for it.
Oh yes.
And then I knew it, and then you take the crab and you shake it very fast, and the vibrations of fast shaking in the water attracts the fish, and so I had them coming to my hand, you know.
That's astounding. The way these are behaving right now, how does this compare to what you saw in the Caribbean? And is it similar in how they're foraging, or is it quite different?
It is somewhat similar. This is a fish that is quite comfortable in the water column, higher up in the water column, without any protection of cover. But they are here, obviously trapped, and they are in that. They remain in that location because they don't know what to do. The Gulf Stream current will take them where the current goes, and then they will just follow the temperature to get back, I would assume.
So there's not a large pile of dead triggerfish sitting in St. Margaret's Bay somewhere?
No. It's although from other years where I've seen them in September, hiding under the stones, they'll just they'll sulk, like when fish are when something is wrong with them, they'll just hide somewhere, and then they go under there, you know. But these fish, they all disappeared at the same time.
So one would assume
sometime in August, when something stirred them up to leave at the right moment, I hope. And maybe they're still swimming somewhere in the Atlantic.
Heading back south.
Yeah.
You've got three here. Were you finding them as individuals, or would they be in small schools, or?
Well, you find them as individuals because you find often with these species that one of them will accept you quicker than others. It depends on what kind of experiences they have logged in their reaction.
Their repertoire.
Repertoire, you know. And so there was one fish that accepted me, and I was feeding him, and then they make some kind of a sound effect which tells the others, come, here's something to eat. And then suddenly you have 5 or 6 of them with you out of nowhere. And finally I had 15 of those fish in that location.
And quickly thinking back, now let's see, are they the ones with 2 teeth or 4 teeth? And
yeah.
Is this?
Yeah.
They're near the bottom here. Is this where you were seeing them, or then in St.
No,
Margaret's?
this is when you come into the water at Paddy's Head. Then you swim into water that's about 15 feet deep, and then you have a number of boulders there that are grown over with wigs of seaweeds. Mm-hmm. And that to those fish was an attraction. You see here we have a lobster mm-hmm. who's taking away the food that I have been providing the fish with. The lobster smelled the food, and the lobster is also used to those fish because the fish are using the same rock where he hides as their cover too. Uh-huh. So as soon as there's a bunch of divers coming over, they all huddle under that rock, and when they are 20 feet further, they all come out again. You know?
Now, how large would this one be? About 25, 30?
It would be, about a foot and a half, something like that. Yeah.
So fairly substantial then.
Yeah. And they are just absolutely gorgeous fish. They are, once you have their trust, they are around you, and you can observe them, and you see how their elegant movements are just something to watch and be spellbound with. Just beautiful.
They, on occasion, do they hover, or I notice that most of the movement here seems to be using the dorsal fin and the
Yeah, that is the dorsal fin and the ventral fin are the ones that they use to turn around at close quarters. And if they want to give themselves a propellant motion, then the tail comes in.
So this is, of course, being the usual habitat would be picking away at coral reefs, or would it be something like this, basically?
I think it's a very adaptable fish. You see them in schools, in the water column, in the Caribbean, high up in the water column. But you see them also, and particularly the queen triggerfish is one that you see in the very colorful one, that is.
Yes.
You see it right in the habitat, where the gray triggerfish, which this one might be, but it's difficult to say. I would have to ask an expert to see, because those fish will adapt to the colors of their environment in their coloration. And so what you see here is the same fish that looks quite different in colors when you see them in the Caribbean.
Yes,
you know?
That's why I was asking you about the teeth, because the difference between the two is that is in the dentition.
Really?
The queens have two very small teeth in the middle, whereas the gray ones. But you can't tell by asking. Then you need a specimen sitting on a table to look at that, though.
Yeah. Well, I had them real close up, and they were nibbling my fingers too at times.
Yes.
But there was nothing much to worry about.
So in part, it's not unusual that the triggerfish are here, but what was unusual this year was that they were here even that much earlier than...
That's right. Because in June the water is still very, very cold. I couldn't give you a degree of coldness there, but I know it when my suit isn't tight. I won't be in there for long.
This is a wetsuit you use then, or do you use a dry suit?
I use both. But when you do this work, I spend hours at it. You know, usually divers go in for 1 or 2 tanks and for 2 hours.
Yes.
But when I go there, I spend 5, 6, 7 hours that I am in the water.
You stay fairly shallow then, or?
In this case, shallow, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I would use 1 tank 1.5 hour. Normally it lasts an hour. You know, diving at Paddy's Head around 20 feet or so. You know, but 1.5 hour was my regular performance there. Breathing slowly.
breathing slowly and trying not to get excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So again, there's evidence of, I've noticed, I was looking at the other pictures as well as here, is that they seem to orient more or less in the same direction. But are they a schooling fish in the Caribbean?
No, not particularly. Not particularly. They are a family, and it's interesting to watch them. While I was feeding them there, that there was one fish that was obviously number 1. And he would be number 1 at the feeding, and he would chase away the others, and there's always something going on there. But they have some communication, and it's interesting to watch that and to listen to it also.
So basically a clicking or a ticking sound.
There is a sound effect which would be interesting to try out with hydrophones and see what's going on there.
Something else for the Christmas list for next year, you hope, is it?
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely fascinating. I'm looking at that. Here again, this is a typical example of how curious fish are. These fish, they're coming to look at my lens, the dome port of my video camera, and they can see themselves reflected in that dome port, and they're swimming up to it, and then nose touch nose.
Trying to get through. You have no artificial light then? You're strictly dealing with the ambient?
No. I don't use artificial light unless I really want it. I think that when you use artificial light, you take away a little bit of the atmosphere that's down there, and it's that atmosphere which is I would call it thick. It's an atmosphere that you are scared, that your inborn survival instinct is scared of in the beginning. But as you become more experienced, you'll find that is a lure that you want to go for. You want to experience that feeling again, where you know there's nothing to worry about.
Yes.
You know.
Oh, that's fascinating. What type of fish would this be? Would you know offhand?
This is also a kelp perch, a cunner. I would say there were lots of them. This is under one of the wharves in St. Margaret's Bay.
Uh-huh.
And
I noticed they're using their pectoral fins to maintain a position there.
yeah.
So they would also be a sort of a gleaner or a grazer, picking in amongst the kelp?
Yes, you'll find them in a very protected habitat, and particularly here around these wharves where you have fish offal. So there is a fair amount of food that attracts always a lot of fish. And it's interesting when you do underwater photography to check out those wharves, because often the fishermen are bringing in unusual fish which you normally don't find in the shallows. And they bring them, they show them off to somebody, and they throw them overboard,
yes.
and then you find a very unusual crab or something like that, you know, here.
So a good place to start to look to begin with, yeah.
Yeah.
The how with this jellyfish, how far down do the tentacles go, the stinging tentacles?
Well, that jellyfish would be, the diameter of that jellyfish would easily be 1.5 foot, and the tentacles the strands would go down 12, 15 feet. And you really have to watch out, because those are nettle.
Oh yes, the stinging nettle type of thing.
Stinging nettle, oh yes. Yes. And sometimes particularly at that time, there were lots of them, of these jellyfish. When you're working with one or two of those jellyfish, and you haven't looked back for a while, suddenly you find yourself engulfed by one.
I noticed
right behind you. You know.
At the beginning of the footage there, I noticed one coming towards your camera. Obviously you don't run away very quickly, but.
Oh no. There's nothing to. It's just mostly water too, those jellyfish, and so you can just throw a little water. Push a little bit of water, and then he'll just.
This is like blowing him away,
off,
but
yeah.
That was very good.
Yeah.
Very good. What have you got on your plate for in the last couple of minutes here? What have you got on the plate for this year? Or is it going to be a secret where you're going to be looking? Or?
Well, not particularly secret. I find that the locations that I know well, I find my subjects there without having to search long for them. I know exactly where I can find them. I scout around too, but I have my preferred spots where I'd like to go, and so that will be in the salt water, but also in the fresh water.
So you haven't abandoned the fresh water yet?
No. Actually, I do much more work in the fresh water because I'd like to do one of the subjects that I understand you're interested in, is the smallmouth bass.
Yes, there.
Yeah, I have some very interesting material on smallmouth bass, which I hope to show you sometime.
Well, and perhaps what we certainly will invite you back again, because that is a topic close to my heart, and it's certainly something to look forward to. I was going to say we wish to thank you very much for coming and showing us the product of your talents again on the program, and we should of course caution people that you have to know a little bit about diving and photography, or a lot about diving and photography.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's lots to enjoy there, but you have to know what you're doing.
Yes.
You know, and there are a number of excellent dive schools around in our cities, and that's all well in hand. But it's a matter of getting more interested in the natural history aspect, which I find the divers should get more interested in.
That's very good. Well, thank you very much, and that brings us to the logical things. It's the program before us. Nature is your world, science is your world. We appreciate some natural history again. Thank you very much, Gilbert.
Thank you very much too.